U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said that a meeting between two U.S. envoys and Russian President Vladimir Putin was reasonably good, but that it is unclear what will happen now on. Trump told reporters in Oval Office that the Russians very strongly want to make a deal to end the war in Ukraine. U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met Putin in Moscow on Tuesday. Take a look.
I don't know what the Kremlin's doing. I can tell you that they had a reasonably good meeting with President Putin. We're going to find out. You know, when I was in this office and I talked about no cards, I said, you have no cards. That was the time to settle. I thought that would have been a much better time to settle. But they, in their wisdom, decided not to do that. They have a lot of things against them right now. But you have President Putin had a very good meeting yesterday with Jared Kushner and with Steve Witkoff. What comes out of that meeting, I can't tell you, because it does take two to tango. You know, Ukraine, I think we have something pretty well worked out with them. They're very satisfied, considering.
And you spoke with Mr. Witkoff and with Mr. Kushner
last night.
Did they give you the sense that President Putin still wants to end the war, wants to make peace?
He would like to end the war. That's what that was their impression. Now, whether or not, you know, that was their impression. You know, their impression was that he would like to see the war ended. I think he'd like to get back to dealing a more normal life. I think he'd like to be trading with the United States of America, frankly, instead of, you know, losing thousands of soldiers a week. But their impression was very strongly that he'd like to make a deal.
Moving on now, Ukraine's push for NATO membership emerged as a key question of discussion during Russian President Vladimir Putin's meeting with senior American officials in Moscow. According to the Kremlin, Putin's top advisor Yuri Ushakov said that nearly 5-hour talks held a day earlier with U.S. Representatives Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner did not produce a breakthrough on the efforts to advance peace negotiations in Ukraine, but noted that the issue of Kyiv's NATO aspirations featured prominently. Kyiv has long maintained that joining NATO is essential for ensuring its security against future Russian aggression. Moscow, however, insists that Ukraine must never be permitted to enter the Western military alliance, calling it a core security concern, according to various media reports. Now, Ushakov said that no compromise was reached on territorial issue, while describing the meeting as one of the most extensive exchanges between Washington and Moscow since the conflict began.
Together with the Moscow.
The U.S. military is now ramping up its presence in Puerto Rico, deploying Osprey aircraft, naval ships and additional personnel as Washington intensifies pressure on Venezuela. The build-up comes days after Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro confirmed a respectful and cordial phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump, which he framed as a potential opening for diplomacy between the two countries. Reuters reported on Monday, citing 4 sources familiar with the call, that Maduro told Donald Trump he was willing to leave Venezuela if he and his family receive full legal amnesty, including the removal of U.S. sanctions and the end of a flagship case before International Criminal Court. The call follows months of U.S. pressure on Venezuela, including strikes against alleged drug smuggling boats, threats of military action, and the designation of Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist group. And the United States has now outlined its plan for the new G20 as it prepares to host the 2026 Leaders Summit in Miami. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that the new format will focus on 3 big goals, which are cutting unnecessary regulations, ensuring affordable and secure energy supplies, and pushing forward new technologies like AI. The first set of meeting will take place on 15th and 16th of December in Washington. The U.S. says it will invite friends and partners, including Poland, which Rubio praised for its strong economic growth after the Cold War. The biggest exchange is the exclusion of the South Africa. Rubio sharply criticized the African National Congress-led government, saying it has damaged the economy with bad policies, corruption and racial quotas. He also accused South Africa of ignoring US concerns, blocking negotiations during its G20 presidency and working with countries like Iran and Hamas supporters. Rubio said that the US welcomes South Africa back only when it makes tough decisions to fix its system. US President Donald Trump had earlier leveled similar charges, saying that the US skipped this year's G20 in Johannesburg because South Africa refused to address what he called serious human rights abuses. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa called the US decision regrettable and said that Washington is acting on misinformation despite South Africa's efforts to repair relations. An air fighter jet with the Air Force's elite Thunderbirds demonstration squadron crashed in a Southern California desert. The pilot, however, managed to eject safely, according to the U.S. military. He's being treated for injuries at a hospital. The F-16C Fighting Falcon crashed about 10:45 in the morning on Wednesday during a training mission over controlled airspace in California, according to a statement from the Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. The fire department said it had responded to an aircraft emergency near Trona, which is north of Los Angeles. Moving on now, billionaire private astronaut Jared Isaacman, President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the NASA, on Wednesday touted his plans to put U.S. astronauts back on the moon before China gets there and sought to portray himself as an independent from SpaceX CEO Elon Musk as he faced his second Senate confirmation hearing. Take a look.
This Congress, and specifically this committee, understand the urgency of the moment.
Jared Isaacman, President Donald Trump's nominee to lead NASA, faced his second Senate confirmation hearing on Wednesday. In his opening remarks, the billionaire and private astronaut warned senators of the consequences of falling behind China in a new race to the moon.
This is not the time for delay, but a time for action. Because if we fall behind, if we make a mistake, we may never catch up, and the consequences could shift the balance of power here on Earth.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz, the chair of the Senate Commerce Committee that oversees NASA, sought assurances from Isaacman that he would prioritize returning astronauts to the moon.
We cannot lose the moon and lose the race to the moon to China.
Isaacman made his fortune in e-commerce and payment processing technology. He has flown to orbit twice on all private astronaut missions as a customer and collaborator with Elon Musk's SpaceX. On Wednesday, he rejected notions that he is a close friend of Musk, someone who advocated for his nomination. Here's Democratic Senator Ed Markey.
Was Elon Musk in the room when President Trump offered you the job?
Senator, my interview, my conversations with the president, and there were dozens of people moving in and out of the room, and I don't think it's fair to bring any of them into this matter.
So you once again, you're refusing to tell us whether Elon Musk was in the room that day.
Trump first nominated Isaacman to head NASA last December, but then withdrew his nomination in May after a falling out with Musk. He was renominated by Trump in November. If confirmed to the post, Isaacman would oversee some 14,000 employees and a roughly $25 billion budget that the Trump administration has proposed cutting by 25% for 2026.